welcome to the Prodigy Student Table. My name is Cindy. I am the host of the show. And today I am really excited to be talking to LBS, London Business School. It's one of these schools in the United Kingdom that we've been working with for a really long time. They were the first schools that we onboarded, and we're really excited to have Ross Porter join us from London Business School. Welcome to the show, Ross.
Thank you, Cindy. Pleasure to be here.
Such a pleasure to have you. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do at London Business School.
Sure. So I head up the Visa and Financial Aid Service at London Business School. So my team will help and guide incoming students through the visa application process, and we'll also support them working with providers such as yourself to organise loans and sort out any financing options that they need for their studies.
Great. What an important role that you have at London Business School. Russ, you are in such a great position to talk about this. We are seeing an increase of students choosing the UK as their study abroad destination. But, Prodigy just helps with the funding part of that. There are other nuances to studying abroad. So can we talk about the admissions process first, about getting into London Business School? What can you share with us around that?
Sure, absolutely. We at London Business School, we have a fairly competitive admissions process, run slightly earlier than many other institutions in the UK because our courses start earlier. So we tend to start in about August, whereas many institutions in the UK will be starting towards the back end of September. So our admissions process now, we are recording this on the 13th of June. Our admissions process is almost completed for the year. I believe we stopped receiving applications for many of our August STAR programs already, if not all of them. They do vary slightly. And we were already beginning to think about applications and receiving applications and building that pipeline of applicants for next year already. We do have a very thorough and competitive process. So those who will be fortunate to join us this year or next year can really feel that they've earned their place to come and stay with us.
Let's tap into your expertise, Ross. So assuming we have a student who has been admitted into your prestigious university and they now need to start the process of securing their visa, what are the different types of visas international students need to study in the UK?
Absolutely, yeah. The visa process is really important for most international students. And obviously, since the UK left the European Union, since Brexit, it's even more important for our colleagues in Europe as well to think about. So the vast majority of students who come to the UK will come on a student visa. That was formerly known as the Tier 4 student visa, but now it is just the student visa. That will cover 90 to 95% of students who are coming to the UK in order to study. In order to get that, you have to have a confirmed offer from a licensed educational establishment, such as LBS or any university in the UK, and a lot of other colleges will have such a license as well in order to support students through the visa process. And as part of that, and as part of the admissions requirements, they will assess your academic qualifications, your ability to join the program, your ability to speak English to the required level as well. And then once they've kind of decided that you are a good fit for the program and you have the prerequisite qualifications, they issue you with an unconditional offer. They will then issue you with a CAS, and we'll speak a little bit more about the CAS later, but that's the document that you need that will then start the visa process.
Let's talk about the documentation. What documents do students need to prepare before starting their visa application or starting that visa process?
Yeah. The documentation is really important. And I guess the first thing to stress is that people feel that the visa process is very document heavy and will be quite bureaucratic. But I must say in the UK, we're quite lucky that it's not, where things can be verified online or through other sources. UKVI, UK Visas and Immigration, which is the authority that processes visa applications, will generally try to do so, which means in many cases, the documents that you need are actually much fewer than you think they might be, or you might be used to submitting for other countries. So in most cases, if you're coming to the UK to study at a university, and the rules do differ if you're coming to another type of institution, but if you're coming to a university, in most cases, you won't actually need to submit your qualifications. For example, the university will submit them to your university, they will check them and they will assess them, and they will give you an offer, but you don't then need to submit them again with the visa application, for example, which means that the main document you need, apart from your passport, of course, is evidence of your finances. They can either be bank statements showing that you have enough money, or confirmation of a student loan, for example, from Prodigy that many students use. And those documents, in my experience, can take some time to get. If you're going through a loan, you have to go through the approval process. If you are using bank statements, you've got to show that you've got enough money for at least 28 days in your account before you can use those. So there is a bit of a preparation time that you need in order to get those financial documents together. And even sometimes, as we all know, just going to a bank and asking for a document can be a much harder process than any of us like to admit in itself anyway.
Yes.
So we do say to students that it's really important to start preparing those financial documents early. All students will need to be able to evidence their finances, but crucially, not all will actually need to provide evidence of this. That depends on where you come. There are different rules based on your nationality. But for example, if you come from Europe or from the States, you might be asked for evidence of your finances, but you don't need to submit them up front. So in actual fact, you could be applying for your visa using the only document you would need is your passport, for example. But if you are from India or China, you will need to submit those finances. And you could also need to submit a tuberculosis screening certificate as well.
I want to talk about CAS. So, what is a CAS, and how is this important to an international student? When does it come into play?
Yeah, so the CAS is the one document that is very important for them. We get many emails and communications from people chasing their CAS throughout the cycle, because it's a very tangible evidence that somebody can go and apply for a visa. So the CAS is actually an electronic document. It doesn't exist as a thing. Most students will receive it as a PDF copy from their sponsor for their reference, but it's actually a digital record that your university or your college will upload onto UKVI's database. You can get your CAS once your university or college or education provider is giving you an unconditional offer. So as long as you've given them all the qualifications you need, proven your English language, they will give you an offer. And then once you accept that offer and pay any eligible deposit that they might require you to pay, a lot of institutions will ask you to pay a deposit up front. Then you will receive an unconditional offer, after which the university will then issue you with your CAS. Now, CAS stands for Certificate of Acceptance for Studies, and it is the document that you need that opens up the visa process. So that document confirms that your education provider is willing to sponsor you for your visa. And then one of the very first questions that you are asked on the visa application form is for your CAS number. And you can't proceed without that, which is why it's a really important document for many people. And once you enter your CAS number, you can then proceed with the application process. It is important to note, and a lot of students don't necessarily understand this at the beginning, is that your CAS, once you've received it, ties you to a particular educational provider and to a particular program. So it's really important that you have made the right decision of where and what you want to study before you get your CAS or before you apply for your visa, because once you use that CAS to apply for your visa, then it can be very difficult to change your mind after that.
Do you work really closely with the UKVI Center?
We do. So we have excellent relationships with UKVI because it facilitates students throughout the visa process, and we can use those relationships to help where issues may arise. So the CAS, so all institutions will create the CAS directly on the UKVI sponsor database, the sponsor management system. So that's not something that we specifically do, but we will then create a record of that CAS and allow the student to download the PDF via a platform that our admits have access to, which means that they can really clearly see what's in that CAS. They've got all of that information, and it gives them the best possible information that they need to proceed with the visa process.
Great. And just to clarify, in order to obtain that CAS, do they need to pay their deposit first?
In most cases, yes, that will be dependent on the institution, but the vast majority of institutions, I'm not aware of any that don't have a deposit at all. Perhaps some of them do. The vast majority of institutions will require you to make a deposit. You may get your unconditional offer before you've paid your deposit, or you may not. That depends on their individual processes. But if they do need you to pay a deposit, you will almost certainly have to pay that before they will release your CAS to you.
And what recommendation do you have for international students? When exactly should they start applying for their visa?
So you can't, as we've just discussed around the CAS, you can't start applying for the visa until you've received your CAS. And you can't receive your CAS until you've received your unconditional offer and paid your deposit. In general, the process can start up to about 6 months before your program starts. So if you're due to join a university, most will start in September time, then you'd be looking around mid-March for that CAS to be issued, and then the visa applications can start. Some institutions will issue a CAS before that 6 month period, but you can't apply for the visa before then. So there's very little benefit to having a CAS that you can't use straight away. And then the visa process itself will take usually between 3 to 4 weeks, although some take longer, particularly if you've got maybe a complex immigration history or a slightly more complicated case. It can take a lot longer, but if everything goes well, you can expect to receive your visa around about 3 to 4 weeks after you've made the application. But it is really important to note that the very first part of an application is to book an appointment and go and give your fingerprints and other biometrics. You might need to do an interview as well with UKVI. The interviews aren't scary, they're just to find out a little bit more about yourself. And depending on where you are, it can be sometimes difficult to find availability for those appointments if you don't want to travel, for example, too far. So that 3 to 4 weeks process is once everything's been submitted and you've been to that interview, but we always allow a couple of weeks to sort out an appointment before that as well.
I know you mentioned it's not very scary, but how can a student ensure that they ace their visa interview?
The most important thing, and I cannot stress this highly enough, is to be yourself. To be yourself, to be open, to be honest, and to tell the truth. The visa interview, they are really trying to assess why you want to come to the UK, and they just want to understand a little bit more background, how you made the decision, how you chose the university, how you chose your course, why you are interested to pursue the particular program that you want. So they should be questions that anyone that's done their background research and understands the decision making process. It's a big commitment coming to the UK to study, and so they should be fairly straightforward questions, providing that you have that. But where we sometimes see students go wrong is they may prepare scripted answers, or they might think that they need to hide particular aspects of themselves. I would always recommend not doing that. Just be yourself, be open, be honest, and if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about.
Makes sense. And I guess that just comes with having a clear purpose. The visa officers also just want to ensure that you do have enough funds to support yourself. Would you agree that that's a really important aspect?
It can be, yeah. So not everyone will be interviewed, and therefore not everyone will be asked to explain the evidence of their funds. But if you put in financial documents which maybe show large deposits or large movements of money or unexplained wealth from your family circumstances, then those are things that quite understandably UKV may want to clarify, and they might want a little bit more information on. So sometimes you'll go for an interview, they won't ask you anything about finances at all. Sometimes the interview may focus around finances. It really depends on more information it is that the caseworker would like to see.
Makes sense. And I just want to add that Prodigy Finance supports our students studying in the UK by issuing you with an official loan confirmation letter. And we do recommend that the official loan confirmation letter be taken with you to the UKVI interview if you get interviewed, or just through that entire process. That's kind of your guarantee to say that you've got the support and the funding needed to pursue your studies abroad.
Yeah, those loan letters that you issue at Prodigy, they work. They're absolutely fine for UKVO. We've worked with you many years to kind of refine that letter, make sure it's got all the relevant information in it. So if you've got a Prodigy Finance loan letter, then your application is likely to proceed, certainly from a financial perspective, without too many complications.
Great. What are some of the common mistakes or delays that students should be aware of that they should try to avoid during the visa process?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really important question, actually, in really something that is worth sharing, because a lot of people do make mistakes, and a lot of people do find that the visa process isn't as smooth as they would like it to be. And we think from what I've seen over my time doing this, is one of the most common mistakes where it goes wrong is on those finances. As we said, the finances is the part of the process that requires the most evidence, and therefore the part of the process which is most likely to go wrong and not go as smoothly as you would hope. So we would always recommend that you really research what it is that you need to submit. Talk to your university or your college or your education provider. Have a look on the gov.uk website. Have a look on UKISA, the UK Council for International Student Affairs. They have a lot of independent information helping students, national students, through that visa process. As will your university. Many universities will help you submit those finances. They will help you check them to check that they're right and in the right format. But even if they don't offer that, they will still be able to advise you if you have specific questions. Because there are particular requirements in the way those documents have got to be set up. You've got to have the money for at least 28 days. It's got to meet a certain format template for a bank statement, for example, or a loan letter. As you said, the ones from Prodigy we know are accurate, but if you're using a loan from another provider, there's certain information that loan letter must have. And these are often where an application can trip up. But it's also really easy to avoid if you've done your research and asked the questions up front. I would always say it's better to ask the same question 20 times than it is not to ask and to make the mistake. So don't be afraid of doing that. The other thing we often see where students can struggle, and I think it's part of human nature, I must admit I'm probably guilty of it myself, is where you put in too much information. That the UK visa process, as I mentioned before, isn't actually as documentation heavy as many people would expect. And in some cases, if you're not aware of that, you might produce piles and piles of documentation that you want to submit and then find you don't need those. And there's a really strong temptation to put it in anyway. And we see this happen time and time again. And we would always advise not to do that. And the reason is that the caseworker will read everything you give them. Even if you give them something they don't need, they will still read it. And then that can be used to ask you more questions or to produce or to send in more evidence, or it can even be used as a reason to refuse the application. Whereas if you don't put it in at all, then it doesn't open up those avenues for complication. So we always say, put in what you need, don't hide anything, but don't put in more than you need. And if you follow those three principles, then that's going to make the process much smoother and more straightforward. And also easier for you. We don't want people producing documentation they don't need.
That's some really great advice. So how do you and your team support students during this visa process, Ross?
So all of our incoming students will have the opportunity to engage with my team. So in my team, I currently have 3 international student advisors who are highly trained and qualified members of staff that can provide really comprehensive and accurate and trustworthy immigration advice. And all of our incoming and our current students have the ability to engage with them, to book appointments with them, to go through their application, to go through the documents that they want to submit. We will check, of all students who need to submit bank statements, we will check those in advance. We won't release your CAS until we know that you've got the finances in the way that is needed, because we don't want you to make a mistake and get yourself a visa refusal. So we will guide and support our students throughout the process. We run a series of webinars throughout the year where we're looking at many of the things we've discussed today: finances, preparing your documentation, credibility interviews, to make sure that students have got that information and to reassure them. So we'll hold their hand all the way through the process until they get that visa, and then we can do the exciting bit of preparing them to join us and be on campus with us together.
Great. What are the rules around working while you are studying?
Yeah. It is permitted on a student visa most of the time. So first of all, this is for those on a student visa. If you're on another type of visa, then the rules might be different. And it's really important to say that at the front, at the beginning, is make sure you know what kind of visa you have and the work requirements that are associated with that. But if you are on a student visa, then in most cases, yes, you will be able to work, particularly if you're studying at a university. If you're studying at a private college or a further education college, that might not be the case. So you should check that carefully. But if you're at a university, you should be able to work. You can work up to 20 hours a week during term time. And many students will use that opportunity to go and get some jobs, to improve their experience, to support their employability, and also, to earn a little bit of extra cash as well. That's always good. But we think that's a really good opportunity for students to enhance their experience of being in the UK, is also being in the UK workforce as well. And then in the vacations, so official university vacation periods. So for example, you might get a break at Easter, summer, and Christmas. You can work full time during those periods as well, providing you haven't got any classes to attend and that it isn't interfering with your studies. You can work full time during those periods, and your university should be able to give you a letter confirming exactly the dates of your term that you can then give to your employer. So for example, if you're working in Tesco, which is a supermarket we have here in the UK, or a local coffee shop, your employer might say that you can work 20 hours over this period, and then we'll increase your contract during the vacation period to kind of maximize your opportunity for earning that.
And what about after graduation, Ross? What are the options for staying, living, and working in the UK after graduation?
So we are very fortunate in the UK that we have a very generous graduate visa here. And most students, if they wish to stay, will choose that as an option. So the graduate visa, it currently gives 24 months after graduation, so 2 years, 3 if you're a PhD. I don't know if we have any PhD students in the audience, but if we do, they get 3. There are some changes coming to that where that might be shortened a little bit to 18 months, but it will still be a very generous visa. It will just be 18 instead of 24, but we don't know quite when that change is coming in yet. But that visa doesn't need sponsorship from an employer, which is great. So once you've finished your studies, you've been awarded your qualification, you can apply for this visa and use it to work at pretty much any employer. They don't need to sponsor your visa. You can change employer. You can use it to look for work. You don't even have to use it for work. If you just want to look for work and you're not sure what it is that you want to do, then it gives you all of that flexibility that you need. There's no cap on the amount of hours you can work. I think the only thing you can't do on it is be a professional musician or footballer. So the next Shakira or David Beckham, I'm afraid, it might not be the one for you. But in most other cases, there are very few restrictions on what you can do with it. And if that one's not for you, maybe you have a great job lined up with a large bank or a consulting firm, and they're offering you visa sponsorship, that you could also move into a skilled work visa, which will give you slightly longer and might give you more certainty, but it will also tie you to a particular employer. But you can move on fairly easily from student visa providing you meet the salary thresholds, into a sponsored skilled work visa route.
So, just in wrapping up, do you have any advice for international students wanting to study at London Business School? Possibly it's their first time leaving home, leaving their country, leaving their family and friends. What advice do you have for those international students?
The first thing I would say, and that's a really great question, because I was also lucky enough to study overseas when I was at university. And I would say my first piece of advice would be to embrace it. It's going to be challenging. It's going to throw up experiences that you didn't necessarily expect, and they won't always be easy, but you will learn from each of them, and it will give you a much richer and deeper experience if you just embrace it all, embrace the challenges, maximize those opportunities, and just really go for it. Make friends with students from other cultures. One of the great things that we have at London Business School is our diverse classes. You won't find huge pockets of mono nationalities in the class. They're a very diverse group of people, and we would always encourage you to make friends from as many different backgrounds as you possibly can, because you're building your network for the future, but also you can learn so much from talking to people from different backgrounds. It gives you whole new perspectives, and it's a great prism through which to see the world.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ross. And then just to our listeners, Prodigy Finance supports a number of schools in the UK. Not only do we support tuition, we're also now able to support living expenses for top universities in the UK. So if you are interested in studying in the UK, just visit the Prodigy Finance website, navigate towards our school search page, and you'll find a host of schools that we currently support tuition and living expenses for. And then we also issue you with an official loan confirmation letter as a security to successfully obtain your visa. So thank you so much for joining us today, Russ, and also to our listeners. We really hope you found this topic useful and beneficial to you. And if you did, please go ahead and like this episode, subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with all information around study abroad. Until next time, bye-bye.